everybody. Welcome to the Cupid's Coach podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ferman, inviting you to transform me to we by your own process of doing dating better. My guest today is an important one. Her name is Karen McMahon, and her company is Journey Beyond Divorce. It's a coaching organization that specializes in guiding individuals through high conflict divorces. Some of you listening are in the middle of one of those. Some of you have survived one of those. And like a lot of us coaches, Karen's work is deeply rooted in her own personal experience of having gone through a high conflict divorce. Not uncommon. A lot of us coaches experienced pain. We found our way through it and we're like, oh, can I just help people get through this? Because if I knew then what I know now, I would have been through it better. So that's why we bring people like Karen on the program. Welcome, Karen. I'm happy you're here.
Julie, thank you so much for the invitation. And that's so true. Like our pain becomes our purpose and our passion, and it really transforms it, doesn't it?
Yes, and I love what I read about you. Your focus is on personal growth rather than blaming the ex. And this is the part that really made me want to have you on the show. Using the pain of divorce as fuel for transformation. Instead of a reason to go hide in the corner and suck our thumbs and hate all men and hate all women. And so I think that's great. Also, she focuses on building emotional resilience and strategic decision-making skills.
Yeah.
Those are important to make, especially when there are a lot of emotions involved, right?
Yeah, and we can't actually make them until we calm down our nervous system and get out of our amygdala and into our rational thinking brain. And so that's just such a vital part of the pivot that has to happen.
You know, it occurred to me as I was studying up on you that I wonder how often it's happened to you where you're in the middle of working with a client and they say, oh my gosh, Karen, if I had known these things when I was married, we might never have gotten divorced. How often does that happen?
Um, I would say less often than because it's high conflict, because typically if they knew, I don't know that they wouldn't have gotten divorced. I think that for many of my clients, they would have begun earlier to do their own work and probably figured things out sooner. But a lot of my audience is typically married to somebody who is either highly traumatized, which means they're living in their amygdala, they're in their own fight, flight, or they're disordered, or they're on some kind of a spectrum. And so I agree, there's a portion that probably could have been like, okay, my husband's autistic. How do I figure out how to communicate and not take his shortcomings personally? That's a big part of it. And then there are those where it's like, I stayed 15 or 20 years too long and I've been harmed. My children have been harmed. For those people, I would say doing what we do earlier would have just avoided a lot of the pain and brought them to a better place sooner.
I'm in the middle of really exploring meditation for myself. And I have a routine that I do first thing in the morning. I'm listening to my meditation that I've crafted very carefully. It's in my little earbuds. And so it is poisoning my mind with all these beautiful things about my goals, reminders about how I want to be, not only for business, but with my husband, with our boys, with my dog, even. I mean, it's cute. And it's the other thing that I've added that's different, and anybody listening can do this. I got a gift from one of my clients. It was a free month on the Calm app. Do you know about the Calm app?
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Whoa, I think I'm addicted. I think I'm addicted because when I see that there's a half hour in my calendar that isn't booked, I'm like, oh my God. And I'll grab my little earbuds and I'll go upstairs to the sunny room and I'll listen. And if I have an hour, I'll drift off into sleep afterwards. And do you know who commented recently that I seem to be more calm? Mr. Ferman. He doesn't notice these things.
Wow. Energetically, though, the energetic shift when we start meditating, right? Because our mind is so chaotic. I call it the monkey mind, right? We're swinging off of branches, and often in my audience, it's like the tail wagging the dog. Your chaotic mind is like running the show, and that doesn't serve you. And when I usually start people with 3 minutes, sit for 3 minutes and just breathe. I breathe in, I breathe out, I breathe in, I breathe out. Watch a flame, look out the window, 3 minutes, and just pay attention. Don't try and control your mind. That's where people think like meditation is controlling my mind. No, nobody's controlling your mind. Just pay attention to it. And as the thought comes in, rather than jumping on its back and riding off with that wild stallion into upset and frustration or disappointment or unforgiveness or whatever, you just go, oh, let me let it go like a butterfly and come back to I breathe in, I breathe out, I breathe in, I breathe out. 3 minutes a day. I started that way. I got to the point where after a half hour, I was like, darn, this was the most calming, peaceful half hour. I wish I had another half hour. And that's when we're not controlling our mind, but we're developing the ability to notice and let go super fast. And in divorce, that is incredibly helpful. Why am I having that argument for the 20th time with my ex who doesn't even live with me anymore? And now I'm angry. Now I'm snapping at the kids. Now I'm making bad decisions as opposed to, oh, this happened to me the other day. I was walking on the boardwalk and I found myself in an argument with my adult son. And I was like, the sun is out. The day is beautiful. Let's let that go. There's no reason for that. And that's the beauty of meditation, is really learning how to have agency over our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Beautiful. So my burning question is, did you know this stuff when you were in the middle of your high conflict divorce?
I would say, Julie, that I was the utter hot mess. I was such a mess. I was reactive. I was triggered. It was all his fault. I jumped into the sandbox and threw sand as much as he did. And I had none of these skills. I will say that it was during my divorce that I actually found Wayne Dyer for the first time. And for a lot of people who haven't meditated, for me, it was easier to follow a guided meditation. And I was locked in the attic for years, which was the only safe space in the house while we were going through the divorce. And I would I would light a candle and I would put Wayne on. And it was the very beginning of me learning to calm my nervous system. And I grew up in a lot of chaos and conflict. So I remember going to a 12-step program and they said the serenity prayer. And I turned to my girlfriend and I was like, I don't think I know the definition of serenity. I don't think I know the experience of serenity. What the heck is that? So
How
no, I
long
was
ago,
very far.
how long ago was that you were reading Wayne Dyer in the middle and hiding in your attic in the middle of a tough divorce?
Yeah. Well, my divorce started in 2003. So I'm going to say it was 2003. Yeah. And
Interesting.
then my divorce was 3.5 years. So I had plenty of fodder to
Yeah.
learn.
And the thing I'm really working on right now, everybody listening knows that we are all in this together. I don't pretend that I got it all together, right? Mr. Ferman and I have been married for 35 years. You think we haven't been through some stuff? And um, I'm working on trigger, when I feel myself being triggered. And I can't control when he's triggered, but I can manage how I handle it over here on my side. So I'm practicing, just being quiet and having 3 breaths before I respond. And then I might be actually responding instead of reacting. These are simple things that our intellect knows, but when we're emotionally triggered, it's hard. It takes a lot of practice and concerted effort.
Yeah, and the thing is, in the moment of the trigger, so it's really valuable to know what your tells are. One of my tells is that my jaw and my neck, those like that's where it shows up for me first, my jaw and my neck. Now, I'll ask people who are triggered all the time, and they're like, I don't know. Beautiful. This is a great starting point. over the next week until we coach again, I want you to notice your body each time you get triggered. I don't want you to meditate. I don't want you to fix it. I don't want you to respond. Just notice your tell. Let's start with where you are. And what you're saying is like, once we're triggered, if we're not noticing it, a fog rises right through our rational brain. There is no ability to access intelligence because we're back in our amygdala. The minute we're triggered, we're in fight, flight, and now they've added freeze and fawn and whatever else they've added to the F's. But we're back there in our reptilian brain. We actually don't have access to the intellect, to the thought process that happens in our prefrontal cortex. And so we look like hot messes because that's what we are. We're actually acting like you mentioned you have a dog. I have a dog. They don't have a prefrontal cortex. They have an amygdala, right? So like we're operating without the human additional brain power that we have.
Just beautiful. I love the way you were talking about tells. I'm going to pay attention to my tells. I know I hold tension in certain places, but what really occurred to me as you were saying that is, I know what Mr. Ferman's tell is. And pay attention to it. It's when his lower lip starts quivering. I'm like, oh boy, here it comes. And now I'm training myself when I see that instead of like, it causing me to like get in there and fight, which has happened only once or twice in 35 years.
Yeah.
Um, Now you have encouraged me to add a step. When I notice that, just interfere and like, okay, I got to tell here. What can I do about it? Do you know who Alison Armstrong is?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not
She's,
sure.
she's my favorite relationship guru. I have studied very closely with her for 25 years. I'm licensed to teach certain modules of her curriculum. And one of the things that she's caught me on over the years is when I'm so excited to say something and share something that I might be inclined not to listen to the rest of what they might have said.
Guilty.
Ah! And so she said, what I'm missing when I do that, when we do that as human beings, we're missing the well. I'm shivering just thinking about it. The well, which is like the well of juicy information that he has, that he will share if I just give him time and space to do it, instead of
Yeah.
jumping in to tell him what I have to say about that.
Yeah. And that's such a big thing. I used to, what in an earlier version of myself, I used to finish people's sentences or start talking before they were done. I was so unconscious. I was so seriously unconscious. And as I learned, it's kind of like that's where gentle compassion, I feel like the one thing I say on every podcast is whatever you're hearing that's you, please don't judge yourself. Please come at it with a depth of self-compassion because we don't know what we don't know, and then we stub our toe. My divorce was a very big stubbing of my toe. I learned that I was codependent, that I was a people pleaser, that I was afraid of conflict, that I was a reactive bitch. Like I learned all types of things about myself and I didn't know what I didn't know.
Did you grow up in my family?
Yeah.
Because as you were saying that, I'm like, check, check, check. One of the things that I know really has caused me challenges as I've grown up, and those of us who are listening who have children, pay attention to this one because I was told a million times, smile and the world smiles with you. Cry and you cry all alone. And that message to me was that my tears were not okay to share in my family. And if I ever got pissy, bitchy, whatever, I was sent to my room. There was no understanding about how to work through difficult communications so that we could hear each other. I was misbehaving. So I'm 65 years old and I'm learning how to do this stuff today.
Well, it's so true. And I work a lot with men. And in our society, even more than women. Like I grew up with stop being so sensitive. My mom was a therapist, stop being so sensitive. So it was a generation, like God knows what she grew up with. And so we all do as well as we can do. But to your point, you start swallowing your feelings. You start believing that your emotions are bad, that you're supposed to hide them. And then you grow up, you get into an intimate relationship with somebody, and everything goes sideways because it's all about emotions. But my emotions are bad, and I shouldn't mention them, and I don't know them because nobody talked them through with me, and I don't understand how to deal with them. And then we take men. And in our society, our American society, I was just watching an amazing documentary called The Mask I Wear, and it's about boys who, starting at the age of 5, they are told, don't be a sissy, don't cry. Boys, football players don't act that way. And here's the 3 words that this documentary says is the most harmful. Be a man at 4, 6, 9 years old. If by 12 years old your son is crying in public, we have a big freaking problem. Then our men get into relationships with us and we're like, what is your problem? Why can't you talk about your feelings? Why can't you be vulnerable? Why aren't we? And they're like, I'm in Japan. Nobody taught me this language. I have no idea what this culture is. I don't know what you're talking about. And so in my world, so much of the conflict that comes out of marriages is this diminishing of our emotional beings and how to learn how to negotiate difficult feelings, how to communicate in a healthy way, how to set boundaries, all of these things, which are vitally necessary for healthy, intimate relationships.
Now, you mentioned a word, Karen, sensitive. Oh, your mother might have said to you, don't be so sensitive. And now there's this whole movement to understand highly sensitive people.
Mhm.
I'm probably a highly sensitive person. One of my sons, whoa, like wherever I am on the scale, he's got superpowers. Like if I'm hurting, he can feel me across town hurting. Whew.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. So the answer for someone like that, stop being so sensitive. Whoa, no, what's a better way to manage that?
Right, because that's like saying stop feeling like you're bad, you're wrong. And I think you're right. I think empaths, I had a girlfriend who was an empath. It was stunning. We were walking down in a park one day, and she stopped. She took a deep breath, she put her hands out, all of her hair was up on her arms, and like 30 seconds later, this gorgeous white stallion came galloping on the horse path next to us. She literally felt the wave of this animal's energy fly through her before we heard or saw the horse. And she explained to me, I cannot go into Manhattan. I'm a New Yorker. She's like, it is assaulting for me to drive into Manhattan. The beeps and the lights and the noise and the sirens. I completely shut down. I can't. And so being a coach for all of these years, one of the things I learned, Julie, is how we're all so different and how quick we are to judge somebody who's too sensitive, who's too this or too that, when we have no concept of their life experience. And it's so valuable when we swap judgment for curiosity. Like, tell me more about that. What is that like for you? Like, it just changes everything. And if we could do that in the intimate relationships, not the first year or two when you're in limerence and lust, but like for you, right? 35 years, like 10 years in, 12 years in, not take the other person for granted, not believe I know what he thinks, I know what he feels, and he's just X, Y, and Z, but curiosity, always curiosity.
Swapping out judgment for curiosity. Write that down, folks. That's brilliant. It's fascinating. I have all these questions, and we're in the world of psychology as opposed to divorce transitions. But You're very knowledgeable about this, and I appreciate your expertise. So I'm just going to keep digging in if it's all right with you.
Oh, I'm enjoying it.
It occurs to me that had my husband and I known more, we would have been able to manage our son's extreme sensitivity from the time he was a child. I remember we took him through, I'm from St. Louis, and the first years of our children's lives, we were in St. Louis, and there's this wonderful Christmas lights um, just demonstration, and you drive through it. And once you're in that line, you can't get out. It's not like your kid freaks out and you can say, oh, I think I'm going to turn around. Now, no, you're stuck. So there we were at Tilly's Park. And anybody listening from St. Louis, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we took our little boy, he was about a year and a half, and he was sitting in his little pumpkin seat in the back. And we go in and we're just thrilled and we're so excited about the lights. Well, he starts freaking out. And we were stuck there for a good 20 minutes. There was nothing we could do. So now I understand. I know more about highly sensitive people. And like you said, with like the noise of the city and all the lights and the sirens, it's hard for people who are highly sensitive. Well, we didn't put two and two together. So you know what we did the next year when it was Christmas time? We
You
did it
took him to the
again.
light show.
We did it again. And that poor child, if he's got trauma now, probably is because we did it to him a second time. Now, looking back at it, he's the one who can feel me from across the city. And
Yeah.
he's the one who has been my advocate, who can feel what nobody else really can feel about me. And he can translate it to my husband. It's amazing.
Wow.
Like he has words that I don't have. He can feel it and he can articulate it, maybe because it's not happening to him, it's happening once removed. So he can say, look, why mom's so upset is simply blah. And he's the one who's become the mediator in our family.
Isn't that fascinating?
I mean, blows me away. So I wonder if you're willing to tell us a little bit about the reasons for why you and your husband chose to get divorced. I was looking at all of the reasons, the reasons why divorce is so common these days are lack of communication, emotional and relationship breakdown, growing apart, it's like values, goals, and interests, loss of intimacy and connection. It's like emotional and physical distance eroding the bond. Those are all under the umbrella of emotional and relationship breakdown. And then there's fault-based issues like adultery, cruelty and abuse, physical, emotional, making cohabitation unsafe. So the poor lady feels like she can only be safe in her attic. For me, it's the lower level of my house where I spend so much of my time. Substance abuse, habitual drug or alcohol use, desertion. One partner leaves the marriage without consent or intention to return. And then there's the biggie, financial stress. What was it for you?
I can't say all of the above, can I?
Oh, yes, you can. You can say
So
because you know you lived through it.
I would say if I were to boil that list down, trust, respect, communication are three very foundational. What do they mean is the next question. So in our relationship, um, we both brought a lot of baggage to the table. I definitely learned that I was a codependent. So codependents want to caretake, but the shadow side of codependence is control. And so if you feel that you're codependent, start looking at all the ways you try to control. Now, my ex was very controlling. So I didn't see my control. And yet there I was trying to change him, constantly trying to change the way he dealt with things. That's control when we're trying to control someone other than ourselves. And so we had a breakdown in trust because he would get very nasty, and then we would have these nasty arguments back and forth. So neither of us felt safe. Um, There were a lot of hurtful words. I would say the one thing that was probably missing early on was respect. I didn't feel respected at all. I was called an effing C and all types of horrible things. Um, and then the other safety piece, right? Because if, especially for women, we need to feel safe. And so the lack of safety and respect. And then my ex had, he made so much money as a young man, but then he always spent more than he made. So he would call it, I'm deficit spending, Karen. What's the big deal? And I'd be like, we've got bill collectors calling and we're paying all this money and bounce check fees and overdraft and we have no money in the bank and I can't sleep at night. Like I need us to have an emergency fund and a nest egg. And so I was poo-pooed. I was too sensitive. And so for me, when I look back, we absolutely both brought a lot to the table. I didn't see him. I think I shamed him a lot. I was so frustrated and I didn't know better. And so rather than, like I teach my clients today, like if you see your husband's tell, I would say, the moment you see the tell, I want you to see how you can acknowledge and validate him, even if you don't agree with him. Given the way you're looking at that, Mr. Ferman, it makes sense that you're really upset with me. Anyone would be, given your perspective of what I did. Can I share another perspective? And so I didn't have any of these skills. And so I didn't acknowledge and validate my ex. I shamed and blamed him because I felt so belittled and blamed. And so we were very much a very big hot mess together. And the money thing became problematic and I stayed too long. And I didn't stay too long. So I think I believed I stayed too long, but we never stayed too long. We always, everything happens to us exactly the right moment and it's for us, even though it so rarely feels that way when it's a divorce. My children were very young and I decided, my therapist actually said, you have such a high pain threshold. If you choose to stay, you become the abuser of your children. Like that's how abusive and hostile our household was.
Because you're
So,
showing your children that it's okay to stay, even though it's abusive.
well, we were all trying to fly under the radar. So all of our coping mechanisms were very unhealthy. They were keeping us safe, but they were very unhealthy. And so everyone's caretaking the big personality and everyone's flying under the radar. And so it just became this very chaotic mess. And I do want to say that my situation was very high conflict. My specialty is very high conflict. It's like 10% of the divorces. So for those listening, there's conflict in every divorce. There are some that are particularly dysfunctional, toxic, dangerous, but the vast majority we can find compassion for the other person, but not until you first have compassion for yourself. Otherwise, it's dangerous. Self compassion first. And then we can have boundaries and we can invite the other person into, I'm doing my work. You can choose to or not choose to. And that's all you have to do because when someone comes to me and they want to like, should I mend or should I end? I'm like, let's try to mend because I guarantee you, if you just work on you, he or she is either going to move closer or they're going to run away and you're just going to know you're not going to have to figure it out. And you're going to be further along. You're going to be more refined, more healed, more aware. And that's all good.
Beautiful. I like it. I'm learning a lot. I'm curious as to whether your family, this many years later, are you on decent terms? Do you have a way of being together, or did you just totally say, you are in my rearview mirror?
Again, my circumstances are unique. There is no contact between me and my ex-husband. There is no contact between one of my children and their father. There is minimal contact with struggle between the other child and their father. And so I think the best way that I could put it, I remember speaking to my daughter's therapist, and he said, and a man with a tremendous amount of history and skill and experience. And he said, when you're dealing with this personality, I tell my clients one of two things. And this is a personality where they don't see their part. They can't own any responsibility. It's a very outwardly blame, belittle, condemn, but not take responsibility. When you're in relationship with a person like that, he said to me, help your children find a lane that they can swim in. And if they find it, just stay in that lane and otherwise just get on with their life. If they cannot find a safe lane to swim in, close the door with love and move on because it's only going to damage you. So one of my children closed the door. I don't know with so much love, but she closed the door. And my other child, um, who's the more codependent of the two, uh, found a lane and he struggles with it, but he feels better being in touch than not. And I completely support and honor that choice of his because as we get older, we get to decide. My children are in their mid to late 20s. They've been through some tough, intimate relationships that kind of mirrored me and dad. And now they're starting to find healthier relationships. So they're seeing their part in it, they're working on their part in it, and they're going out and finding healthier partners. And I mean, this is now I'm in your world, right? Like this is like that's you want to be supporting people who are ready to do that. And it's a I think that it's a journey for all of us. We come with our childhood wounds and then we take it from there.
Definitely. Did either one of you, you and your ex-husband, choose to remarry?
Um, my ex-husband has been engaged 5 times. Uh, he did not remarry yet. I'll say yet. And I probably went well in the other direction. I was kind of a single parenting, and then as a result of the trauma of their childhood, they both ran into some big problems in their young adult years, and so if I'm completely honest, I think that part of it was taking care of them and building my business, and another part of it was resistance to engaging in an intimate relationship when it had been so displeasing and hard. And that's actually work that I'm comfortable saying I am doing a lot of work right now to I'm 60, I'll be 64 in September. I would love to meet and marry a beautiful man and do it right. And I am doing all of my inner work to shed those layers that need to be shed so that I can do that in a healthy way.
Oh, I love that. So my invitation to you is the same as my invitation to everyone. Privately register with me. I tuck you away. We have a quick 30-minute phone call and I make sure your profile's all good. And I do half of the introductions I do in my world today are community service based. It bothers me that currently the way the industry is, the only people who are able to hire matchmakers are people of high net worth, typically men. Matchmakers are afraid of us girls because we're harder to serve. And when it doesn't go well, we can be kind of nasty. We can. And if we feel like we've been sold a bill of goods, I don't want to, so we're more sensitive. And I think part of it is that we never thought we should have to work so hard to try to find a relationship. It was supposed to be like Sleeping Beauty and just hanging out there, and the prince is there, and there's the castle's there, and the white horse is there, and all of that. And when we're actually trying to find a relationship and it's going badly, it's hard to embrace that. And then when they hire help and they spend a lot of money and it doesn't go well, oh boy. So that's the reason why I think the dating industry is really in crisis right now, because all that's available to people is online dating, which is inexpensive comparatively, way big time expensive personal introduction agencies. Those are typically
Yes.
blind date matchmaking companies. You don't have any choice. You just pay a big fee and you're like praying they're going to do a good job. And that they have the right people, right? They might
Yes.
have the right people in their database. If it's the kind of agency that only introduces paying people to paying people, whoa, Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that is a very small group of people. I don't like that model. So, Karen, there's a question I'm dying to ask you since you are the queen of what to do after your love has been broken and you are in the middle of divorce, you've gotten divorced, and you're thinking about what's next. How do you know for sure when you're not ready to start dating yet after divorce?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting way of asking it too. How do you know when you're not ready? There's so much that people do externally going through divorce. It's like, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing with my attorney. I want to check on the finances. And for us, it's all about the inner work. To be free, you actually have to do your work. And so I would say that one way to tell is if you still remain triggered. If you still remain triggered and reactive with your soon to be ex or your ex, or now it's transferred over to your children, and you're engaging in some of the same behavior, and you're truly believing it's because of what they're doing that you're behaving the way you are, that's a red flag that you just have some more healing and refining to do. If you're diving into dating because you can't stand being alone, because you have a big hole to fill, that's like the 4th of July grand finale. That's like a hard stop. The worst thing that we could do is go with our wounds and our neediness out into the pool of dating, because what you will attract, I can promise you, is the same man or woman with a different face, and you will be rinsing and repeating the same thing. And so that is a really hard thing to do. And I've had many clients come back to me going, I am so devastated and heartbroken. I dove into this relationship. I did this thing, and now I've got double the wounds. And so you don't know, you're definitely not ready when you're dating to fill a wound, fill a gap, fill a need. And in fact, there's a lot of people who in your world who are talking these days about becoming the one instead of finding the one. And so, right. And so I know that's what you do. And it's that I love myself. When I love myself, and I'm so excited about the human being I've become. And here's the biggest lesson I had to learn, Julie. When I know that he is the lucky one, if I choose him, that's something I never knew my whole life. Like I was always the lucky one. And that's a really big thing to look at. Like, do I truly believe that I am as much of a prize as the person who's actually getting to date me?
I like that. I like that. When I realize that I am the prize, I might be ready to start dating again. Yeah. And so often, when we hear about transitional relationships, people will often say, I don't want to be the transitional person. How do you know, Karen, if you are going to be the transitional person or if the person that you're having a date with or a third date with or a fifth date with might actually be a potential keeper for the long haul?
In all transparency, I just started dating again after a very long hiatus. And so for me, it was really interesting, certainly to know that I was the prize, but also because I could care less, like I love my life. I would love, love, love a partner, but like I'm happy. So that's a really great place to go from. But then dating became this like sociology experiment for me. It's like, oh, so I really like speed dating because you actually get to engage with 12 human beings over 2 hours. And it was so interesting to see how the conversation went, how I felt like watching my own tells and behavior, and judgment and passion or excitement. And so I really would say that when you start dating and you are just paying attention, right? Like you're just going out there and it's like, this is just going to be an interesting evening. I'm really curious how much I can learn about this human being. I'm really curious, given that I had a problem with A, B, and C with my last relationship. I'm really curious how I show up how they show up. For me, I'm a relationship person. I always wanted to go deep, and I always found men who were like, yeah, I don't want to, like, let's not drag us down, or, I don't want to get that. I don't want to talk about that feeling stuff. I remember one guy said, I don't want to talk about that feeling stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, good information. you know. So I do think that there's so much, if you're fully enrolled without being attached, it actually could be a very fun and interesting experience. And I would say, if nothing else, I have fodder to be a stand-up comedian. I've had some great stories, and I learned a lot. I learned about what works and what doesn't work. Yeah.
I love what you said about not being attached. That is a key. If we can go into a first date or an encounter with somebody who might become a first date and we're not attached to whether it happens or not, we're just allowing the flow, allowing the unfolding of who this person is without the attachment. I hope this is my person. I just don't want to date anymore. I'm so tired of being alone. I really want this to be my person. Well,
Eh.
yeah, it's I like it when people ask the question, I want to know what people's primary dating purpose is. Why are you dating? And if it's not in alignment, we shouldn't be pretending that we could make a relationship happen. If one person is trying to fill a hole and the other person's ready for their last first date, whoa, that sounds like a transition relationship to me. And we might hear the answers to our questions with a filter like, okay. It's like when I asked a gentleman that I dated early on, I really want to have kids. How about you? And he said something along the lines of, I love kids. And I'm thinking, check. He didn't say he wanted to have children with me or he could envision having children with me. He loves children, especially the two he already has, which is lovely. But it took me a year and a half. And we were 4 months before we walked down the aisle together, and the invitations to the wedding had all gone out before I felt compelled to dig deeper into the question. And he was really honest. The answer to the question is, I just don't know. I don't know if I'm going to want to have children down the road. And I said, thank you for telling me, for being honest about it. We just saved ourselves probably a divorce because I want to do this. I want to do children. So we're going to have to transition our relationship into a friendship.
Well, you know what I love about that? I think that, like, what immediately comes to mind to me, Julie, is how often we abandon ourselves. And in that moment, how many people would have been like, oh my God, the sex is great. We talk all night. Maybe I could do without the kids. Like literally abandon ourselves in that moment. And I love that you literally, you must have loved this guy. The invitations were out. It was a couple of months away. Like, what a hard and beautifully honoring decision that was for you.
Yeah, it was an early grown up moment for me. I knew that I was going to be unfulfilled if I didn't find a way to have family in my life. And I really wanted them to be my children. I just did. And, here I am. The boys were 34 and 31, and I was with one 2 nights ago. I was with the other one last night. And oh, I'm glad that I had the courage to pause. And so I guess that's what we're really encouraging people to do is to look at where you are right now and knowing that you might be ready for a relationship, you might not. And during this space between relationships, I want people to be where you are, Karen. You love yourself, you like your life, you're already good, you don't need a fix, don't need
Right.
to fix someone else. And so I'm curious, as you're dating now for the first time in a long time, what qualities are you looking for today that you weren't looking for back then?
Yeah. That's such a great question. So I've always been wired for relationships. I've always had a lot of girlfriends, a lot of really healthy relationships. And it occurred to me when I looked back on my love life that every single man that I dated throughout my entire adult life had no depth of relationships.
Hmm.
How I, of all people, didn't see that, is just like, wow, when you don't know what to look for, you just don't see. So for me, very early on in talking to somebody, I'm asking about, their family, their siblings, their kids, their best friends. Like, I want to get a juicy flavor that you're a human being who can go deep and who has a depth of, I want to say intimate relationships, relationships that really matter, where you can be vulnerable and open. So that's one for me. And the other one is I love a smart man, but I always dated men who were like so high with intellectual intelligence and so low with emotional intelligence. And so over the years, I've realized that as much as I get jazzed by an intelligent guy, when I'm with people who are emotionally intelligent, they're my people. We're swimming in the same waters, we're speaking the same language. And so there are a lot of other things, but for me, those two are really, really important. And I find that from the very early conversations, you can figure that out. Like it doesn't, I mean, I might say I'm a professional question asker, so maybe it's a little bit easier for me. But I think that you have those conversations, and pretty quickly, someone shows you who they are, and then the question is: are you going to only hold on to the shiny parts that you like, or are you going to look at the whole picture and decide whether or not to proceed forward?
I love that. And how I think we should best, how we can best manage that is to hold the potential relationship in suspense for a while. We don't yet know
Yeah.
what kind of relationship it's going to be.
Yeah.
It might be that we check each other's boxes beautifully and we decide to keep seeing each other and it feels good being together. But can we allow space? Can we allow the possibility that this person I'm having a date with might not be my person at all for love and
Right.
romance and lifetime of partnership together? Maybe this person's going to be a fun plus one that I can bring to an event with my work. Something like that. Maybe this person shares a recipe with me that becomes my favorite recipe that I can make on all of my future dates and with my future partner, but he wasn't the one I partnered with. Is that okay? Can we just allow the now instead of, is this the one? Can I be done with dating?
And it's so interesting because I'm curious. I know you work with both men and women, as I do, but I find that women have a tendency, and maybe men do too, to like somebody and then just future create that future fantasy and like close off all the other opportunities, as opposed to, I'm going to still play the field. I really like you, this is a blast, this is fun, let's go out next Friday. But no, it's like I'm already thinking about like the next 6 months, and what if it works, and what does that look like, and like it almost feels like this hardwired thing that we have to swim against the current on. What do you
Yes.
have to say about that?
Exactly, Karen. Women, Alison Armstrong calls us the Velcro of the universe. Okay, we
Yeah.
we meet somebody and we're like, and and guys don't know that when they say things like, "Oh my gosh, you just love my mother. My mother, you and my mother going to get along great." She's thinking he's going to introduce me to his mother. He's going to ask me to marry him tomorrow, or he'll say, "Oh man, I've been dying to go to Tuscany." Yeah, you're the type of person I could go to Tuscany with. He's taking me to Tuscany. No, he's not. He's just thinking out loud. So when that happens, we just have to laugh about it and laugh at our instincts and talk about it. Part of me is saying, okay, great, this is my guy, and we're going to go run off in Tuscany together. But I know this is really just our first date, and we're just exploring possibilities. I know you didn't mean to say, I'm taking you to Tuscany on your spring break. You didn't say that, did you? And you can laugh together about it.
Right. And watch your interpretations is what I'm hearing you say. Like careful the difference between fact and fiction. My interpretation is not fact, it is just my interpretation.
Yeah. And the other thing that's kind of a push and pull in early relationships is guys are typically more motivated to find out if the sex part's going to work out. If, is that going to be a good part of our relationship? They kind of want to know for all kinds of reasons. And we kind of want to have a boyfriend first before we go there. So that tension is always there. I say, bring it up, talk about it. And if a guy's getting a little handsy on the first date, he's getting a little too, she can just say, I love that you're affectionate. I am too. Just so you know, in the dating world, I stay pretty platonic for a while. I just want to really know who we are. So if I don't reciprocate and I don't act like I want to jump into the bedroom, it's because I'm not ready to do all that yet, but we're having really fun getting to know each other, something like that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, yeah. And so let me throw one at you. I was talking to this fella, met him on Match, just lovely. We had a number of conversations. Supposedly, a couple of things happened that didn't allow him to meet me right away. At the end, he got a car, he got it insured. Our last conversation was like, Karen, I am not even going to ask you to meet me halfway. Now, everything's been just lovely. In fact, I text him, he calls me 2 seconds later. And I was like, great. And then I never heard from him again after like 4 or 5 weeks of back and forth. And so I was disappointed because he was probably the most enjoyable man that I spoke to, and just in both intelligence and emotional intelligence. And what I find fascinating is when I tell this story to my girlfriends or whomever else, everyone has like all of this inquiry and worry. And did you call him back? And what happened? And why would he do that? And that's so terrible. And like this whole big to do. And I was like, it was a lovely 5 weeks of conversation, and whatever happened, happened. And it didn't work out. And so how do you advise a client? Because it fascinates me how
Mhm.
they weren't even me and they were upset. They were
Yeah.
upset and they were creating stories.
I love the question, Karen. When someone that you're interested in disappears or just sort of vanishes and you don't know why, it's tempting to make up stories about why that would be. And I guess because I'm just getting ready to go into another month-long boot camp and I'm thinking about what happens on week number 3. And week number 3, I encourage everybody to go back and find those people, find those threads that just sort of like just ended. Sometimes what happens is there was somebody else who came into the picture and he got rubbernecked, okay? And he might have been exploring with her and she was like a flash in the pan. And 3 dates into it, he realizes this is not the person, or she ghosts him, who knows what happens. And he's a little embarrassed to come back to Karen because he knows he abandoned the conversation. So I say rise above all of it. And let's pretend his name is Stan. Hey, Stan, you text him. Hey, Stan, it's Karen. Remember me? We had this great conversation and then we just sort of stopped communicating. What, are you okay? Just want to make sure, okay, how's everything going? Just check in with no attachment. He could say, yeah, I know, I'm so sorry. I dropped the ball on that one and I started seeing someone, my old girlfriend came back, or I ended up in a car accident and I'm still in the hospital. Those things happen. So just rise above it, give him the options. Hey, what's going on? You seeing somebody else? Are you still dating? Did you end up in the hospital? What's the story? Without admonishment. That's the secret.
100%. I love that. But go back with curiosity. And that's not chasing because you're going back once.
Right. And you're also seriously curious and you're concerned because you enjoyed this person. I always encourage people to have like lots of burners on the stove occupied, you know? So there might be somebody you're having a second date with, and all of a sudden Stan shows up again. You're like, oh my gosh, what happened to you? You disappeared. I'm glad to know about you. Are you going to tell Stan, no, 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 I just started dating somebody? No, you're not sleeping
No.
with this other person yet. They're on one burner. We're going to let Stan have another chance. And you might say something to Stan like, you know, I had to say, I was worried about you when you disappeared. I felt a little weird. So let's just be sure, but we're just being authentic and honest with each other. If you decide tomorrow, you know what, Karen's not my girl. I think I'm done with Karen. Just let me know. Something like that. And then you're helping yourself out, but you're also helping out all those other women that might come into the future that maybe he would treat a little better.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you know what I like about the way you're advising is it's like we take it all so seriously, we take it all so personally, we get so, and the idea that, we're if we're out there dating, we're a bunch of single people looking for our person, and as with the rest of the world, there are beautiful people, um there are traumatized people, there are shy people, like it's like everyone's out there. So I think that, and I don't play in your pool. I don't coach my clients around dating at all. I usually pivot them to someone like you. But I do think like to enter dating where you've gotten to a point where you really don't take people very personally.
Yeah. It's just the strangest thing. In dating, we do tend to take things personally, and really, it's not personal at all. We're each on our own journey. And yes, we might be looking for our person. It's always sort of the hum in the background. But I don't want that to be the only reason why people are dating. That means if you go on a date with somebody and they're not your person, it was a waste of time, energy, money. No, we go on a date to tickle this person, bring smiles to faces, be curious about who this person is. We're trying on a hat with
Yep.
no attachment. That's the secret. And you can do it once you've reached the place that you told us about. When you
Right.
know you're worth it, you're the
Yep.
prize, you're happy, your life is great already. Might you invite someone into it? Maybe. Let's see how the conversation goes.
Yeah.
Curious. That's it.
I love that.
Sounds easy, doesn't it? Until we get like attached, we're attracted, we're attached, the oxytocin starts to flow, and we're like, ah. So we just have to laugh about it. So, one more question, Karen. How do people work with you? If they want to know more about you, if they want to be in your world, how do people progress in their relationship with you as a professional?
If somebody listening is feeling like, wow, I'd like to learn more, we have a rapid relief call. Go to rapidreliefcall.com and you can book a session with me or one of my team members. And we help people both with all of the logistics of divorce, as well as that emotional untangling from your partner, and typically untangling from your childhood trauma wounds and triggers, so that the idea is when you emerge from your divorce, you have really refined yourself. You do consider yourself the prize. You're not triggered. You're not creating stories. And you're just feeling very 2 feet on the ground. So, Journey Beyond Divorce podcast is the other way. If you want to just hear virtually any topic on divorce, you can go to Journey Beyond Divorce podcast and listen there as well.
Excellent. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. It's a beautiful new relationship we have. We need to hang out and go hiking, cook a meal together. We need to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you're going to be on my podcast as well. We're recording that in just a little bit, and so I'm excited to have had this conversation with you, and I'm really excited to introduce you to my audience.
It's beautiful. So, folks, take all this to heart and go out there yourself and transform me to we. Thanks for being here.